Yes, I did. For myself.
I'm like class.
Right, everybody. Welcome to this council meeting, which will probably be quite brief, I imagine. So I'll start by asking Councillor O'Brien to do the karakia for us. Thank you. Meeting notices. Live streaming. The Whakatane District Council live streams council and standing committee meetings held in the Totara room within the council building. The webcast will live stream directly to council's YouTube channel in real time. The purpose of streaming meetings live is to encourage transparency of council meetings. So by remaining in the public gallery, it's understood that your consent has been given if your presence is inadvertently broadcast. Please be aware that the microphones in this room are very sensitive to noise, so please remain quiet throughout the meeting unless asked to speak. I especially welcome members of the public who are increasingly joining our public gallery and online, so thank you for your interest in the democratic process and thank you for continuing to show respect to elected members, staff and each other. Health and safety notice. In case of an emergency, please follow the building wardens. Make your way to the nearest exit. The meeting point is located across the road at Peace Park. Bathroom facilities are located opposite the chamber foyer entrance, the entrance off Margaret Mahi Court. There is a third notice, and that is with respect to item 9.2 on the agenda. It's been withdrawn from the agenda by the Chief Executive. Understanding Order 9.9. The reason for the withdrawal follows a request from the iwi Chair's Forum to defer the paper until it's had the opportunity to inform and confirm its approach. We look forward to the paper coming back to a future council meeting. So we've really only got from the Mayor's and CE's report, one report. Welcome to Ben Rosa from Election Services, and there's any apologies? I've got an apology from Councillor James. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Mover Councillor Duke, seconder Deputy Mayor. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Passed. Acknowledgements and tribute. Well, I'd like to start by acknowledging our interim CE who will remain in the seat until the 9th of September. Thank you, David, for maintaining your hands on the tiller. And also the council in its entirety for the role that we all played in the process of getting a new CE in place pretty quickly. And so welcome to our future CE as of the 9th of September, Mr. Steve Berdia. Thank you, Steve. I guess I could say that I'm delighted to see that one of our own got the job, so that we were able to put faith in the people we've got, and we had some very good internal candidates. So it made making a decision quite difficult, but we got there and pretty swiftly. So thanks to all for that. Are there any other acknowledgements or tributes? Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Worship. Just to follow up, and I guess there's probably something already in the pipeline, but the recognition of our Olympians who have returned home. Is there something planned on behalf of council, or more importantly on behalf of the district, to acknowledge their successes?
Well, there isn't a firm plan in place yet, but we're working on it. And I guess it's up for discussion at some point. We probably will follow what we did last time, I guess, something like that.
Yeah. Well, again, there's been some talk as to how we should acknowledge Lisa Carrington's ongoing success.
Yeah.
But then again, you don't want to downplay the success of our rugby sevens or our silver medalist, Hayden Wild. So is it likely to take the form of a presentation of Panama or something along those lines?
We'll do something, but I'm not sure if it'll be a parade, but the parade was what we had last time, so a parade and some sort of presentation probably in order. I mean, pretty gargantuan feat by
a small district like ours.
Yeah.
Just do you want to comment, because I think it's your team that are looking at trying to arrange something.
There are some logistical issues around.
Yeah, it's the logistical issue. So the reason why it's may not look like it's happening quickly, and there's a bit of work going on in the background, is the logistical challenges are trying to find a window where everybody is in Whakatane at the same time. What happens tends to happen after the Olympics, and in fact, two of the award have already gone into camp overseas, or some of them live overseas. So we're working on just trying to coordinate something that works for everybody. But yeah, it's underway. We will do something.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Is it worth us making a little statement about it so that the public know that there are plans afoot?
Agreed.
It would be nice if we had some idea of what it was going to be first, but as soon as we've got that, then I think we'll put something out there.
And I guess the logistics of making or having them all in town at the same time is literally just about impossible. And that's what made me think perhaps.
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, one of them lives overseas for a start, so.
I know, yeah. All right.
All right, thank you, councillor. Conflicts of interest. Does anybody have any conflicts of interest to declare that are relevant to the business we're conducting here today? No? Okay, cool, thank you. There is no public participation. We're at the confirmation of minutes section. There are 3 sets of minutes to confirm. But 2 of them have got public excluded sections in them, so I plan to take them all together. If somebody has an issue with any of the public excluders, we'll have to move into public excluded mode later on. You're all okay with that? All right, well, does anybody have any observations on any of those meeting minutes? None? In which case I'll ask for a mover. Councillor Isles moves. Seconder, please. Councillor Jukes. All those in favour for all of those. The ordinary council meeting of 17th of July, extraordinary council meeting of the 25th of July, and the ordinary council meeting of the 30th of July. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Passed. Reports. Well, as usual, Mayor's report first. Well, under sort of just general comments, I think the world's on a bit of a tightrope in terms of geopolitical tensions. We've got wars that are already ongoing in various parts of the world, and some of them look like they're going to escalate dramatically, especially in parts of the world that are very sensitive to, or have, to the energy system. So, apart from that, our economy looks like it's gone soft. So the RBNZ, I think it was today or yesterday, announced that it's going to cut the OCR by 25 basis points. So we're down to 5.25, but it's kind of paradoxical because they do that because the economy's gone soft. So I don't see any real light at the end of the tunnel for that, but we'll see how we go. Mixed up with all the geopolitics, I think there's still quite a toxic brew out there. I guess of my report, I'll just point out the thing that I think is probably the most important for us in the near term and medium term is some of the meeting that we had with the Kaingora chief or director of our region, Darren Toy. Now in this town we've got 500 properties that are owned by Kaingora. I mean, this is how this sort of town started, with a mill and then the need to build accommodation for people. Kaingora has undergone or is undergoing significant restructure. So in our region already they've basically reached their quota for developments. But those properties, because we always talk about how we're struggling to get development, housing development and stuff. So 500 is a big chunk of properties that are usually they're small houses on big blocks. So the scope for intensification is there, but unfortunately the brakes have come on a bit. So there are developments around town that probably won't get across the line. And that's going to require some serious advocacy, which I've talked about in my report. There's been a newly formed entity, which is the Social Investment agency, which seems to be getting its feet just now. And Darren Troy talked about being a commissioning agency, which, to be quite honest, it needs a little bit of homework to actually figure out what that is and how it's going to help us drive development. But if we don't get out there, all of us, and advocate for our district and for, get more housing in here, then it's not going to happen. So that was a strong message that Toy gave, and I think I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot of investigating to be done yet. So.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So in terms of how we can advocate and support, did he give any indication of what he would like from us? And other councils across the district as well, because our housing impacts their housing.
He's still in a little bit of limbo because there's a lot of uncertainty about how things are going to shake down. But I think it's clear that we've got to get out there and advocate, and we've got to say, and I guess one of the main points of advocacy is the fact that we're fairly a region of high deprivation. We need it more than other places might need it. So as that sort of panorama, we're due to have another meeting with Darren soon, I think, and we'll probably get more clarification then, so I'll leave it at that. Councillor Puller.
Your Worship, have they got any appetite to release those blocks of land to private development?
It wasn't something that was mentioned. I guess, again, until the panorama is completely clear, because we're a region that's already filled our quota, but there are other regions that haven't. So it could be that we can do some sort of a transfer from those that haven't met their quotas to us. But again, we'll have to fight for all of that. But yeah, whether or not those properties could just be sold, I asked myself the same question. Sell them to developers, but they were always social housing. We've still got a problem. I mean, if we do something about the social housing, we've still got a problem with other developments, and that all depends on really, I guess, our spatial plan. So we come back to that.
Can we move on from that particular item? Page 14, the item 5.3, the Steering Committee for the Eastern Bay of Plenty Economic Development Strategy Refresh. We've recently had the Minister of Regional Development, Shane Jones, in Kawerau. Was there an opportunity for Whakatane to put forward any of their projects at the meeting?
Well, I'll tell you what's happened there. I mean, basically this has been in Core EDA's camp, and most of us didn't really know what was going on there. First I got wind of it was when the Mayor of Kawerau, Failene Tunui, called a meeting of governors and Toidiate to inquire as to what exactly Toidiate was doing for us. They cost us $240,000 a year. And to my surprise, I found out that they had commissioned or subcontracted, call it what you like, the development of this strategy to Polis at a significant cost as well. So Polis has put together this strategy, and it's in a draft form, and it will come to full council. It's not there yet. Shane Jones, I think what's critical in this strategy is that there are three of us and we're all in it together, as in 3 districts all together. And so highlighted in the strategy is the fact that Aporiki is the sort of centre of agriculture with enormous potential, but they also are an agricultural area. Kawerau, and it surprised me at that meeting that you referred to that Shane Jones spent almost his entire quota of time talking about energy. So I thanked them for that, because I think that we don't really, there's not a real acknowledgement out there that without energy we are nothing. And Kawerau has got a lot of untapped potential in terms of geothermal. So I think what he's saying is that there's all this untapped potential there and the ability to hang industries off that. So that's Kawerau's strong suit. I did point out that we're not exactly devoid of energy here. We've got Kawerau's got actually slightly less generation than we've got. We're generating in this district about 260 megawatts of power. I mean, we've got 2 dams and 180 megawatts of solar that's been consented in our district. So we also are an energy generating centre. It really depends what kind of industries you're going to tack on and take advantage of that generation. But I was really happy to hear him come at it from that angle, and this draft strategy will be coming to council soon.
Supplementary, if I may. Again, I appreciate what you're saying there, but we've also got projects which have stagnated since Shane Jones was last in government, and that was why I was wondering, have we got that opportunity, or have we arranged an opportunity to hopefully have him back around the table to discuss those projects?
He will be coming back. He gave us he was quite happy with our approach, I think. That's the impression I got. The fact that we're 3 districts that have got high rates of deprivation, that we're getting together, and so, but he is coming back, and I think that, and he did mention, in fact, he gave strong clues that he intends to, with this pool of $1.2 billion, back some of those some of his PGF projects that didn't get across the line. Now, he was a bit vague about which ones, deliberately about which ones they might or might not be. So, but yes, if they need a bit of extra push, he was suggesting that he was there to provide it. And there might be scope for other projects that aren't on the agenda yet that all has to be talked about, really. But we of course, our district is also a centre of agricultural production. I mean, I wanted to point out in the meeting that it was a little bit, we were a little bit light, because our component was that we're a nice place to live, and this is where the professional services are. But, we have got a big agriculture sector here. We've got Fonterra, which employs 400 people. We've got, boat builders that combined employ 150 people. We've got Kawerau Mill, Whakatane Mill, which is 200 people. And most importantly, and often not appreciated, is the fact that our hospital has got 800 employees. So we are the medical centre in this sub-region, the go-to place. And it's important. I think our hospital's got potential to grow. We're getting more and more diagnostic services in there as we speak. It's a flash little facility we've got there. So, and of course there are other things that are still up for discussion, I think.
One more supplementary?
Sure, which is you're pushing it.
Fair enough. Well, you did say it was going to be a
Yeah.
so don't give it a little context. Paragraph 6 on item 5.3, where it says that the Minister will be having a series of nationwide summits to discuss regional priorities, kicking off with Nelson, which is, well, it's already been, hasn't it, the 12th of August. Have we got a date when they're going to be in town?
Not that I know of. Steve, do you know of a date?
20th of September.
Okay.
So will that be with elected members only, or will it be with Chief Executive and ELTs, or?
Yeah, Chief, I understand that the the invites are mayors and chief executives, but I'm not 100% sure. It's still but it is going to be the 20th of September, and the basic program is that Shane Jones and his team, Minister Jones and his team, provides an update on the Regional Infrastructure Fund, and then there is some sort of presentation back to Minister Jones from the whole Bay of Plenty region. It's not just Eastern Bay, and then there's an opportunity for discussion.
And I think we have a date for when this proto strategy is shared with council. It has to be soon, because
Yeah, we've got 2 people working on a workshop presentation to brief you on it and get your input. And that's going to go to the 3 councils, so Potiki, Kawerau and Whakatane. And I would hope by the end of August we've done that, because we're trying to get ahead of the 20th of September.
Excellent.
And I do acknowledge it's been a little bit cart before horse. We were just, and this is a great lesson actually when you step outside of a process, how it can affect things. But it's always been intended that a draft be prepared and then it get go through each council for input. However, when Shane Jones was coming to town first to Kawerau to do the opening of the off-road highway, that was sort of seen as an opportunity maybe to pitch that we're working together. But I think actually that pitch just went a little bit too far because it talked about a strategy that hadn't surfaced with the councillors yet. But yeah, we're working to correct that.
Councillor Fuller?
Thank you, Your Worship. You haven't mentioned it here, but do you want to touch briefly on that online presentation we had from DIA?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm still digesting it, I suppose. But look, it seems that what they've done now. I mean, we spent 3 years talking about setting up entities that had scale so that they could borrow more cheaply and greater amounts of money. And I was been sitting there for 3 years thinking, well, haven't we already got such an entity, the LGFA, or even better, government itself? I mean, nobody's got bigger scale and deeper pockets. So it was actually quite good to see that now they've said that, yes, we can borrow money directly through the LGFA for water infrastructure, but, and the level of borrowings is increased from our maximum ceiling of 280% to up to about 500%. But, they can throw we can borrow all the money we like. And you've got, financing of loans to do, and that still comes back to an affordability issue, which is the one I jumped in on that where you were online. So I think that affordability issue is the critical one, and the one that worries me the most is where the regulatory bar goes, because you can push the regulatory bar up as far as you like and pay as much as you like, because you can have the best of everything, but that comes at a cost, and cost to people is a stress. I mean, there's a thing called financial stress, which breaks up families, which causes people to take their own lives. And so I'd say that financial stress is a health issue. And so as much as we can borrow more, it's still got to be serviced. So I'm not sure if we're completely out of the soup. I think we need to take a good look at what we're doing and see and be a bit smarter about the things we do. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm still digesting. I think we all are. But we've got some level of clarity now. And so, they've left it wide open. Yes, councils will retain ownership and control, and we can either go independent or join up with other people and form a CCO so that we can access this additional funding. That will be probably discussed tomorrow at the mayoral forum as well. That was actually given the task of going away, and that was before this announcement, and doing modelling of the financial modelling of what it would look like if our region, being Western Bay, Tauranga City, Rotorua, and 3 Eastern Bay of Plenty councils, if we got together and formed entities, some sort of combination or permutation. But it looks like Tauranga was already charging off, doing their thing with Western Bay. And then that left us with, Rotorua seems to have their water system under control. And so that left us wondering where we would end up. So I think that some of the uncertainty's been lifted with what government's done, which I think is an advance. It's a step in the right direction, but it's still borrowed money at the end of the day.
It sounds like they're not going to raise the bar, and small rural supplies are going to come out of the envelope that they were trying to put everybody in. So, but I hear what you're saying about affordability, but we can't do nothing either.
No, nobody's talking about doing nothing. I'm just talking about being smarter. But although it was nice to hear that, and to also hear it repeated. I mean, Simeon Brown said the same sort of thing at a mayoral forum a couple of months ago. So I intend to write to the minister and get it on paper anyway, just to make sure that they understand, because it can be institutions that are pushing up bars too, like And we asked that question at the meeting. You know, Bay of Plenty Regional Council could decide that they want to make. If we didn't have, if the regulatory bar stayed where it was, there would be no need for us to do anything with our water plant, and therefore the consenting would be relatively straightforward. It's if you say you can't carry on with the practice that you're currently doing, you need to do something better or different, then you've got the issue, because that's going to cost. So I'd like some more clarity around that.
They are pushing back with the regional councils, aren't they, in terms of
My interpretation was that they're going to give them their, yeah, so, but I'd still like to write a letter and get a official.
They're going to give them what?
They are going to they're going to restrain them a bit, I think. They're going to pull the reins a bit in on them, I think. I think that's my subject to interpretation, of course, so don't
Can I just make a
off
comment?
the record.
I was going to talk about this in the CE's report a little bit. You've jumped ahead, so that's
Well,
great. Just 2 or 3 things.
shall we move into the CE's report? Or are you going to carry on?
We're going to receive your report first.
Yep. Well,
I'm happy to move your report.
okay. Seconder, Councillor Isles. Move, Councillor Paula. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? It's all yours, David.
well, we'll start with local waters done well. So what I've written here was actually written about 2 hours before the announcements all came out. So, and you've covered a lot of what those announcements roughly say. I did want to just pick up on 2 or 3 points. So one is, you know, the legislation is going to be passed in a couple of weeks. It's going to set in place some of this thinking that, you know, you heard about. And that will include us having to deliver a water delivery plan by June 2025, which a key component to it is us having to show what model we could work under and be financially sustainable, yet to be finally defined, by June 2028. And I think over the next year, there's going to have to be some pretty hard conversations about how we do that, whether we do it ourselves or whether we do it with others. Conversations that are underway are seeing whether across the Bay of Plenty there is scope to work together. It doesn't necessarily have to be the entire water deliveries program. It might be components of it only where you can gain efficiencies collectively, and that would seem sensible, and hopefully that's an efficiency not only in terms of how we do things but in terms of the finances as well. Bevan's started some great work around this affordability question for us, because of course that's a critical part of financial sustainability. And while the standards, there's some indications that standards might be either held or maintained so they are at least consistent across the country, and whether that's, you know, holding back regional councils or what, I'm not quite sure, but it's trying to get some consistency of standards. The reality is, particularly in terms of our wastewater schemes, they are really old consents they operate under. They are back in an age. And so I think the reality is there will be upgrades required regardless. And that's going to add to that burden around our investment required, which will add to how on earth we're going to afford it. And yes, the 500% figure is attractive in one way because it opens up access to finance, but of course the affordability, the paying it off, is still a very relevant issue. So I think there is a lot of water to go under the bridge, definitely. Yeah, and it seems to me we're sort of at the stage where we're buckling up now for the roller coaster that's going to come in the near future around it, and let's prepare ourselves for those conversations. So I just want to say that around local rules. You're right. I was going to just comment in the report around, I guess, what we've seen with the late adoption of the LTP. You know, poor old Lainey, she finished the LTP the day after she was talking to the ELT about the annual report. And of course, following very closely after that is the annual plan. And what we've ended up with is this concertina in effect that's going to happen. So realistically, the annual report is likely to not be adopted till about November now. It's still within the legal statutory time frame, but you know, how far out in time do you drag on about reporting about a year that's finished months beforehand? So was just really to raise that in your awareness. We are going to be really compressed in time, and staffing wise, there are some key people there that will, they'll be deeply involved in this right through till Christmas time, all those three. And then finally, it's okay, I just wanted to acknowledge Paul. Paul's last day today. He's been with us for 3 years. He's pretty well set up his team, and that team has reaping huge benefits for us as a council in terms of our relationships with iwi and hapu in particular, but also internally in terms of our staff, in terms of our knowledge, our learnings, and our way of understanding and working with our partners with iwi. So I just really wanted to acknowledge Paul and wish him all the best for the future at Rotorua.
You're a David.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Anyone have any questions for Dave? Andrew already had one. And
Well, it was just following on from what you were saying with regards to the local orders done well, and you've got the mayoral forum tomorrow. So hopefully, as once the mayoral forum meets, we're going to be even more advanced than what hopefully we've been in the past. I recall, excuse me, Steph attending those meetings, and when on her resignation, you sort of have been attending along with David. So hopefully now with the mayoral forum tomorrow, you'll get some sort of steer from what's happening on a regional basis, or
I
how
think-
we might be able to attack this.
I think that what the mayoral forum was doing is kind of being superseded by what was shared with us to some extent anyway.
Is that right?
Well, it has changed the panorama a bit. We'll see what
Wondered.
happens.
I mean, there definitely will be a conversation around are we working together, or what is the lie of the land? And you're right, the announcements this week may have shifted some people's thinking.
I mean, if Taro, TCC and Western Bay decided already that they were going to join hands, they already joined at the hip anyway.
Yeah, I realise that.
And therefore, they'll set up a CCO, and then they don't have to go and, I guess that's a lot simpler process because now the funding agency is there. So maybe they'll carry it. We don't know. Well, we'll see what happens tomorrow. I'll let you know as soon as
That's why I was thinking it gives a bit more clarity to
Yeah.
the
I
situation.
will do that if I get any clarity. Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Was this not to do so much with David's report, but it was hopefully to get an answer from a question. So there's quite a lot of online chatter about our rates bills going out a bit later, and there's some confusion about how that is all going to play out when they have to pay it. And I was just wondering, is anyone, thank you Nandor for putting a reply on there, but I think you got bombarded again after that. So it's really for me, if people are asking me questions about the rates delay and going out, they don't have to, do they still have to pay the next quarter just as quickly, or does it step itself out?
I actually can't answer that. I'm not quite sure the sequencing of the timing of those payments. We'll get you that clarity and we'll put something
All
in.
right, and if we can, comms team can kind of get some clarity on online, that would be great. Thanks.
Wasn't it already indicated that the rates demand would be 2 weeks late?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, no, the first one is later than normal.
Yeah.
What I'm not clear on is then the sequencing.
Yeah.
I thought
It's
that
obviously
they
full
moved to 2 weeks.
They
That's
are,
my
but they're
understanding.
saying that that's got 2 weeks less to pay the next quarter
Yeah.
and the next quarter. So that's what they're,
No, we'll get some
then they were
clarity
just
for-
blowing up all other stuff.
Deputy Mayor, Mick, are you suggesting that maybe the second one should be pushed back 1 week so it actually just staggers the...
I'm not sure what it is, but that's the clarity I'm needing. Because I think if you can just say, this is it, there's no other penalties, like someone else brought penalties up towards the end.
So there is through your chair, there is a rates newsletter that goes out with the first invoice, and
Okay.
it also talks about the impact, timings, and if they want to discuss a payment plan.
Okay.
Information going out with that rates, the rates.
Well, thank you.
Are there any further questions for David? Consultations?
It's not so much a question, I just wanted to talk about David's comments in regard to Paul. I just wanted to acknowledge, you're going. I remember when you first came into this organisation and I asked Jay King Hazel about and she said he's 2-2, and the question is, are you guys ready for him? And I think what we had was a emergence in time of when our organisation was looking to change, and you came in with all the skills that you bring, both in terms of changing how we work as an organisation and changing our relationships externally. And you had an enormous impact on this organisation. We see that every time we go out and people talk to us about the different relationship we now have with tangata whenua than what we had before you were here. So, yeah, tēnei te mihi ki awa.
Councillor Boynton.
This is just also just a mihi to Paul. Tēnā koe te rangatini, tērā mō tō mahi rangatira mō a tātou hāpori mō a tātou iwi katoa I rote tō rohe mō a tātou kaunihira. Obviously, following on from Nandor, just a big mihi to you for your work. Also, and said the relationships that you've been able to establish, but also too in the first term as a Māori Ward Councillor, to be able to know that within council we have the ability to see ourselves reflected in the mahi and know that we are able to relate in the issues that we have that are happening within our hapu, within our whānau, what's happening on the ground, and knowing that council have a close ear to it because you were here. And the opportunities that we've been able to have for our communities with the mahi that you've done, the understanding that has happened throughout the council with the workshops and wānanga that we had is all part of moving us forward in an environment that allows us to get the most out of our communities and know that they are valued. So I'm mihi to you, and yeah, we'll be going over to Rotorua again. What are you up to? And see how you're going, and I'm sure that they will love having you home.
Well, I guess we can have a mover and a seconder for David's paper. Councillor Isles and seconded Councillor Jukes. All those in favour?
Aye.
Okay. We're now on to the Local Government Electoral Legislation and Maori Constituencies Amendment Act paper, which will be presented by Charisse. And maybe supplemented by Ben Rosa, who's online, maybe to answer some other sorts of questions. So thank you, Charisse.
Thank you, Mayor Luca. Tēnā koutou councillors. Yes, I would like to welcome Ben Rosa from Election Services, who's with us online today. Ben is our subject matter expert and here to support and respond to some of the questions that you may have. Welcome, Ben. So as you know, we're here today because of the recent change to the local government electoral legislation and Māori wards and Māori constituencies in the Act 2024. Today, Whakatane District Council must decide to either disestablish Māori wards effective for the 2025 local elections or to hold a poll at the 2025 local elections with the outcome of that poll effective for the 2028 and 2031 local elections. So as our councillors, you have the opportunity today to express your personal views on Māori wards. I'm sure you will have read the report, so I'm happy to take it as read and answer any questions.
Thank you, Charisse. Does anybody have any questions for Charisse? There must be some.
Probably going to be more in the debate.
Yeah. Okay. No questions? Oh. Oh, Nando. Oh, Nando.
Thank you, Charisse, for that paper. I won't make a political statement, I'll leave that for the debate. But I do have a question, which is around, I'm aware that I think it's Palmerston North has resolved to not disestablish Māori wards and seek advice as to the implications of not holding a referendum. So my question is, are you aware of that, and can you give us any information about that? Because it seems to me that there'll be a number of councils who might want to protest this legislation, and that would be one way of doing it.
Through you, Mr Chair, Councillor Tunchel is not quite Palmerston North, but I am aware of Whanganui that has made that statement and saying that, though I'm not aware of the implications around that decision, but I'm most certainly, I can take that away and look into that.
Thank you. Is being able to give us any advice?
Kia ora. Yes, so you're quite right that in the case of Palmerston North City Council, they have resolved to retain Māori wards and to seek more information about the consequences of not holding a poll. I'm not aware of any formal advice that they've received at this point, but informally from our conversations with the Local Government Commission is that it is recommended that Council do follow the legislation and make a resolution to either disestablish their Māori wards or retain their Māori wards and hold a poll. Failing to do so would be a breach of the legislation. As to what the consequences are, I can't give legal advice, but all things that I'm aware of point to a recommendation that Council do follow the legislation.
Just following on from Councillor Tenchos, in the Kaipara decision that was held recently, the iwi Ngāti Whātua has decided to go to court for the judicial review over the Kaipara's decision to disestablish. Has that been looked at by our council if for whatever reason is a risk?
Through you, Mr Chair, in short, no, we haven't. We most certainly haven't looked at it. Potentially something we can explore in relation to some of our fellow councillors or staff at Waka and get some information come back.
So I can clarify that actually the judicial review is around not consulting with Māori rather than the decision around disestablishing rules. It's the 11th of September is the first sort of hearing of that.
Just to follow on from that, so because this process is part of the legislation and must be done by a certain date, just clarifying, so that process of consulting with iwi has not been able to happen here?
Mr Chair.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor Luca. I've got a couple of questions, if that's all right. If we go to having a referendum at the next elections, what's the percentage that you require? Is it 50-50? Is it? What percentage is it?
Simple majority, I think it is.
51.
Through you, Chair, yes, majority. So we'll have to be
Thank you.
Anything over 50.
If we were to vote to disestablish them now, does that mean that the Māori ward continue until October next year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that means that if we voted no, that then continue to October next year, and then if the referendum said yes overwhelmingly to keep Māori wards, does that mean that because we haven't included that in the next election, does that mean that we have no Māori wards for 25 to 28, even though we voted yes? Or does that mean that we will still put up Māori ward candidates at the next election, but if the referendum says no, then that gets put down? How does that work?
2028.
Through you, Mr Chair, if Council decides to disestablish the Māori wards, that would be binding for 2025 and 2028. We will not be holding a referendum we do not do our representation reviews until 2027 again.
Okay, all good. Thank you.
Otherwise, they remain in place.
Thank you.
Councillor Boynton.
Just a question regarding the removal of the consideration of Māori ward seats in a representation review. How, if the basis of the legislation is around reinstating a poll, isn't the poll tied to whether or not a Māori ward is established at a representation review? And if it's removed from a representation review, how does that work?
Can you just clarify the question again?
Oh, sorry. It says in the report and clarifies that every representation review, Māori wards are to be considered. That has now been removed.
Yeah, just to, do you mind if I just answer this question?
Sure.
That's for councils that don't have Māori wards under the current legislation. Councils that don't have Māori wards that conduct a representation review need to consider whether to establish Māori wards. That particular provision has also been repealed as part of this amendment.
No, but I won't go into it. I was going to ask, so if you decide to establish, that means you don't have a Māori ward, but then there is no part in the legislation that says that you have to consider it at the next representation review. That's what I seem to be receiving. Kei te pai, I just wanted clarity because it seemed that you removed the ability to put it forward as an option. And the reason why the legislation's been changed is so that there can be a poll on that option. So, keep by just trying to understand.
Mayor?
Thank you. I'd like to go back to Councillor Tunshaw's question because I don't know if we got some clarity on that. So, I'm just reading their article, the media release from Palmerston North. So they are saying they're looking at a third option potentially. So it's disestablish. Keep them and go to referendum poll, or Palmerston North, are they saying that they want to keep them, but they don't want to go to a poll? So I wasn't sure, is that a likelihood option for us, or how does that get tested and when does it get tested?
I think as Ben has said,
They can't do it.
The legislation requires you to do a poll. So I think from what little thing I've got here is they want to know what would happen if they do not run a referendum. So in other words, what's the punishment? What's the consequence?
Oh, but they would be in breach of the legislation regardless.
Yes. It would be in court, I suppose. That would have to be settled.
Okay, all right.
I'm just following on, supplementary to that. In the DIA presentation that I sat in last week regarding this legislation, that question was raised as to whether or not what would happen if a council did not do the referendum. The answer was that in the legislation itself there is no detailed punitive measures to say what would happen if you didn't do a referendum. However, you would be in breach of the law. Whatever that looks like is up to that. And that was the answer, was being in breach of the law.
It would be tested in a court of law, presumably.
So it doesn't mean they're not going to, because they've already voted to go towards referendum. They were asking the question.
And the consideration, and there has been sentiment that of others considering that, and if there were others who also took that line, who would be taking them to court and how much that would cost.
Any further questions? Councillor Tanshos, have you got your hand up?
So I've got myself a bit confused now, so I'm seeking some clarity. So perhaps if I step through those. The first question is, am I I think I just heard that Palmerston North had resolved to hold a referendum but are seeking advice about what happens if they don't. Is that correct? So they have resolved. My second question is the time frame is quite tight. I think we've got to have made a decision by 6th of September. In terms of if we were to hold a referendum at the next election, 6th of September seems like an arbitrary date. In terms of the practicalities of holding a referendum, when would that need to be? Like how much? When would a decision need to be made in order to practically be able to hold it?
So it's through you, Mr Chair, in support of this legislation change, councils must make a decision by 6th September on whether it is established or hold a poll. Thereafter, council will have the ability to then prepare to hold that poll alongside the 2025 elections. So that time frame, I'm not sure if Ben, you're able to comment on what that time frame looks like around preparing for the poll.
Yeah, so just emphasising that the point Cherie's just made, a decision does have to be made by the 6th of September. Once that decision is made, we would start preparing pretty much straight away because there's lots of things we have to do in advance of the poll. But there is not an option to delay this decision beyond the 6th of September.
Well, it is an option, it's just we would be in breach of the legislation. My point being that, for example, we've had no consultation. If we wish to have consultation, we couldn't meet that 6th of September timeline. Being in breach of a timeline is, it's not the first time council would be in breach of a timeline, right?
I'll let Councillor Puller ask his question first.
Not a question really. For me, it's reasonably straightforward. We've already signalled that we want to keep the Marywood. So the answer is to go with the poll, as far as I'm concerned.
Are there any questions before?
Yes.
Yes.
Question. I just wanted to clarify because I had been asking quite specifically when is the specific date of this decision, and I never received an answer, and so I just want to clarify that today is the date that we are making that decision in this meeting right now.
It's an opportunity to make the decision.
Okay, because there were specific questions asked quite many times to confirm that this is, confirm that, and I did not receive a response.
Mr Chair, I can confirm that as soon as the legislation passed into law, we could get our Chief Executive to communicate our next steps to our councillors through email correspondence, outlining specifically today as the date for these decisions.
When was that sent?
I'll be able to confirm.
Okay. No, because I had been recently, clarifying. I know we get quite a few emails and things like that. And because some other times we've had reports come through and they're not specifically sure if that's just receiving reports or is that when the discussion happens? And it was just wanting, that clarity, or get that actually, that's confirmed, yes, that is it.
I think that we're all, Councillor, if I could just say, we're all, this has been so rushed. And I think when we had a workshop on it, we actually signalled, I think the phrase we said was the end of August, that we know and have clarity. And I think that legislation only passed last week, which is when we were given the 6th of September. So that date of 6th of September, as we ourselves for, I think it was only last week the email went out.
Councillor Dennis.
So my question is, just lost it now. Oh, if we vote today not to disestablish Māori wards, and obviously for that reason we're meant to go to a referendum at the next elections and we'll meet our date, are we at some stage later on, we'd still be able to have a meeting in October or whenever and revoke our decision if the legal implications have been explained to us and we decide not to hold the referendum. Was that possible through council?
Only if it's before the 6th of September.
Doesn't answer my question. Are we able to
Between the
revoke?
6th of September and election day, if you
Vote.
if you choose to not hold a poll, you want to be able to, during that period you were asking, can you come back through council
Yeah.
and revoke
Yeah.
the decision to hold a poll? Yeah, let's think through that one. 75% vote for it, reversing the decision. Can we, it gets into the standing.
Revoke part of the decision for that's to hold the referendum.
Just be cautious about offering any advice on that.
Okay, so let's leave it.
There's legislation or there's
You want to come back and probably have some legal.
No, that's okay. Obviously, the Palmerston North situation will develop before the next elections and we'll see what happens.
All right, so if there's any... Oh, you want to make a comment, Bevan?
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. So, if we choose to retain Māori laws and not establish Māori laws and go for a poll at the next election, which is 2025, you will still have Māori wards through to 2028.
yes.
So, you've got 4 years of Māori wards. Either way, the outcome of that poll,
Clear.
and hopefully there might be a decision, a legislation change that allows you to have another crack at it between.
Or the poll might return a pro-Maori Wards vote, you don't know. It's really close, and the poll wasn't that far away last time either.
Just one more.
Councillor Tanchos, a question?
Yes, thank you. I quite like the approach Palmerston North has taken, and I'm wondering, can we join ourselves to, if they're seeking further advice about the implications of not holding a referendum, can we join ourselves to that in some way?
So, I mean, what I look at is the chief executives have got a bit of a email trail going, so there's a connection through the chief executive, so we can continue that connection.
I suppose I'm asking, can we formally support and be party to their advice or something like that?
I think we can always ask for advice, and we will. I don't think we need to formalise it myself.
That's something the council would need to decide. That's something the council would probably need to decide.
As council, yeah. So, okay. So maybe that's an amendment to the recommendation.
But it would be a note in the Palmerston North have opted to go for the poll, just asking for the advice on what the implications of that are.
We can take her on as a
Separate one.
separate one,
Separate one.
saying and seek advice. There's never any harm in seeking advice.
Maybe,
What does the room think?
I would be supportive. I mean, there's no harm in seeking advice. I mean, the main parts of the decisions will be made. Seeking advice, I'd support it. We have to consider too that the referendum does cost.
That goes out. Papers next week. It's going to cost, but $3,000 to $6,000.
Well, we'll make that a separate recommendation. We'll vote on it separately, shall we? To start with, we'll vote on the 3 recommendations we have in front of us. So can I have a mover and a seconder for those? Move Councillor Boynton, seconder Deputy Mayor. We can debate these and then we'll come and do a separate one on the seeking of advice, if that's okay. All right, so we're up for debate, folks. Oh.
So I'm just clarifying just going to the recommendations.
we're voting on recommendations 1 to 3, and then we can have an additional recommendation to seek advice or legal advice on the matter, or however we want to word it, and we can vote on that one.
Chair, do we need to have that?
Well, my own personal opinion is that we don't need to have that. We'll just seek our advice.
That's my view too.
I agree.
Yeah, but if the councillor wants to put up an additional motion, it will fall or pass. So let's just deal with the 3 we have on the table at the moment, because that's fairly clear cut to me.
I'm very clear with it. I'm fine.
Yeah, you're okay. So there's no debate on those,
On what?
on the 3 that we just moved and seconded.
No debate.
No, I don't know, I'm asking. Does
Oh.
anyone have any points of debate? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'll give share some thoughts. I'm totally in favour of us retaining Māori voice, which means we will be going to a referendum poll. And there's a couple of reasons aside from really liking the people that we have sitting around the table with us. So first of all, the Local Government Act requires councils to have a place for Māori to contribute to decision making. You know, and in the past that might have been having a Māori advisor, but we moved very quickly in the last couple of trienniums to valuing and needing them around the table. Māori seats, like there's this sense of loss from some people that some Pākehā are losing power for some reason if we've got more Māori sitting around the table, but it's actually about representation that better reflects our community. You know, and we've got unofficially 53% of our community are Māori. In the 2016 poll, there was a 35% differential between those that supported and those that didn't. In 2019, it had shortened up to 10%. And I'd really like to think that if we go to poll, that it would be overwhelmingly in support for Māori wards to continue. In 2021, when we voted, it was unanimous vote from councillors. And some of the councillors that voted at the time were aware they could be doing themselves out of a role and serving their community. But they were prepared to sacrifice that for the greater good of the community. Our Māori ward councillors huge value around the table for the decision making, educating us not just on tikanga but on the whole Te Ao Māori perspective.
Deputy Mayor, can we debate the motions that are on?
Is that number 3?
Is it really?
Oh, I mean one of those ones there. I got the wrong end of the stick.
Well, I think we're supposed to be debating the motions that are on the table, and you seem to have expanded
I
it.
thought during debate we were allowed to give opinions.
Well, yes.
Yes. Okay, all right. Well, I was just going to say, finish off with they don't just bring the way you view the world; they add value with their view on the environment as well. And finally, they bring networks that connect us to the wider Māori community, not just with the runanga, which is a different governance structure from the community.
Councillor Isles.
If I may just add to the Deputy Mayor's debate, in actual fact, of the 10 councillors, 5 of us affiliate to iwi. So just to recognise the fact that it's not only the 3 Māori ward councillors, that there are other members of council, like the Deputy Mayor and myself, who are affiliated to iwi. You're fully supportive of the retention.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more discussion on these 3 recommendations? Councillor Dukes?
I think Tony might have had her hand up before me, but yes. Yes, I'm supportive of everything that Deputy Mayor has said. I think this is for us by far the best option to go to a poll. I don't think we'd be achieving anything by just establishing our Māori wards now. It's worked really well. I'm enjoying how it's working. We're getting a lot of insight and a lot of good feedback from our Māori ward councillors. We do have to comply with the legislation, and I don't want to see us trying to buck the legislation and having to have any consequences. I'm a bit of a complier with legislation person, so I'm supportive of these 3 recommendations and would like to thank our 3 Māori ward councillors for the contributions that they have made so far to date and will continue to.
Councillor Boynton.
Oh, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Obviously, I'm not in support of disestablishing. And the way that the legislation has come across, it means that I will be supporting a binding referendum. However, I do want to acknowledge the courage of this council and what they have shown in recent years to support the establishment of Māori wards. In 2017, on the 14th of November, a decision was made to establish a Māori ward, and that was quite a close decision. During that period, there was a shift in our community, and it took the courage of many of our non-Māori, our tangata tiriti whānau in our communities, who were rallying in support to establish Māori seats and ensure that a Māori voice could be had at the table in Whakatane. Although that referendum wasn't quite successful, it was one of the closest that had been seen in the country. Then in 2021, with the unanimous decision of establishing Māori ward seats, we were able to have that dream realised. That journey was a 20-year journey of being able to establish Māori ward seats. It wasn't just a recent thing. And to not only see the courage of the council then, but also the courage of the council and councillors that are in this room today. Earlier this year, we had our own meeting to see where things were at, and I was so heartfelt to hear members who may have previously not been in favour of Māori wards actually come out there and champion it. And it shows, it's a testament to the courage of our whānau here in Whakatane, and also to ensure that they value everybody. Everybody who sits around this table is here because they are passionate about their community, they love their community, they want to ensure that their community's voices and opinions are heard and part of making great decisions to look after all of us, to look after our tamariki, our environment, and everything else that works in our community. And so for me, it's a privilege to not only sit here as a Māori ward councillor, but to sit in this particular council with our leadership and all those around me. So obviously in support, and obviously to mihi to the rest of our community, our iwi, our Māori Land Trusts, all of our communities for the support of Māori wards and ourselves as Māori ward councillors. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Boynton. Any Councillor Tanchos?
I have a point of order, because when you pulled up Deputy Mayor Emick for speaking outside of the scope of the recommendations, it made me have another look at the recommendations, and what I realised that there's no recommendation to actually, or there's no resolution to actually retain wards in there.
You don't need a chair because you've already made a decision to have them. So that stands. As part of the last representation review, you're not changing them. You don't need to vote to retain them.
Cool.
You make a decision to change something as well.
I had understood that in the bill or in the Act that it does say we have to resolve to retain or resolve to disestablish.
No, we can't. My understanding is we can't. You don't vote to retain because you've already made that decision. So, otherwise you could say
Your Worship, I think the legislation's referring to those councillors that haven't established the Maori wards that they have to do this other process, whereas we already have. So what we've already signalled that we're retaining it, what we're doing here is that we're going to have the vote for the poll.
So I'm just looking at the legislation itself, and schedule, it says Schedule New Part 3 inserted into Schedule 1 of Local Electoral Act. Group 1 local authorities must resolve to retain or resolve to disestablish Māori wards and Māori constituencies, and we're a Group 1 authority.
That will occur after the referendum. I believe not on this particular paper. A challenge with putting that resolution up on this paper would be the counterfactual. Council could vote today to disestablish. So we already have Maori wards. We're going through to the next election with Maori wards. We're running a referendum, and then there will be, after the referendum, a decision to retain or disestablish. I believe that's the mechanism that we're trying to push through.
Just on what Councillor Tansos is saying, if you go to the page above the recommendations to the 2 bullet points, the second bullet point states resolve to retain Māori wards and hold a binding poll at the election. So I think that should be the recommendation, because that's what you've written up. That's the 2 options you've said that we've got to do, and yet when you've gone to option 2, you've missed out that retain Māori wards and hold binding. So I'm quite happy to change the resolution to that second bullet point on page 24.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I can, there's a little excerpt in the report here that states that the local government, the Amendment Act specifically says that it's to reinstate the ability for binding polls on the establishment of Māori wards. So Whakatane District Council have already established Māori wards, and it is just to reinstate the ability for the binding polls on that.
Point of order, it's actually more than that. It's not just reinstating an ability to have a referendum. It's requiring us to have a referendum whether we choose to or not. It's mandatory, and it's not. The previous legislation allowed a binding referendum if a petition of 5% of electors asked for it. But this goes beyond that. It's saying, regardless of a petition, we will be required to have a binding referendum.
The recommendation is based on
petition, 5%.
There's no petition for this.
Just wondered if Dan's got anything to offer, that's all.
I would support an amendment.
Just wondered if Dan's got anything to offer.
Ben?
Yeah, my suggestion would be that Resolution 2 does be reworded, that Council agreed to retain Māori wards and hold a binding poll at the 2025 local elections.
Oh, I disagree.
Good, thank you.
Because if this is here, all this is just asking us around the poll. That's all this is asking.
Yeah, I think we'll take an adjournment and come back and resolve these technical issues before coming back. So we'll take 20 minutes. welcome back, everybody. I need the permission of the mover and a seconder for the modifications to the motions.
Yes.
Okay, can I get...
Shall I clarify what they are?
I'm just going to ask David to read them out slowly, so that we're all clear on what they are.
So the intention would be to add 2 additional resolutions to what you were calling. The first one would become the second resolution, and it is that Council resolves to retain Māori wards for the 2025 triennium. And then a fifth, what will become the last resolution, is that Council directs staff to seek legal advice regarding consequences of not holding a binding referendum in the 2021 election.
You all good with that?
Yes.
We have a mover and a seconder. We can have some discussion, or we've probably already had some.
I don't think we've finished the original code, have we? So
Back up for discussion, yeah.
Yeah. That's what you're doing.
I was going to put an order, so.
Yeah, I'd like to just say a few words, please. I'm in favour of retaining the Māori wards, and for a good reason. Because I'm in favour of official iwi representation and sitting around whichever table is relevant. And the reason I'm saying that is because I sit on the Marata Surge group. We have a co-design group which is made up of 3 iwi. One of the iwi's divided down to 3 hapu. And I have found that has been so successful in the fact that as iwi sat around the table and realised that they had a important influence and input into our discussions, it became really apparent that we all want the same thing. We all want our children to grow up in a wonderful area. But because those representatives were representing their worldview, we were able to quickly work out some of the issues that could have become a problem if they weren't there. And because of that, they were able to also influence in a positive way, of which would make the process quicker. And it has added value, and it has added a wonderful sense of togetherness and progressing that probably faster than it would have done otherwise. I see that on other ones too, in which I've been involved in, which is the Aotearoa Reserve initial talks when we were doing it initially, and it was the same thing. As everyone came together, we were actually making really good progress. And therefore, I can see that whichever table we sit at, whether it's in subcommittees, whether it's around this table here, I think it would only enhance and benefit our whole district and region to retain Māori wards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? Councillor Tanchos.
Thank you. First of all, I'm really pleased with the amendments. And I think it's really useful for us to say really clearly that we're voting to retain Māori wards because we're doing this under duress. This is not something we're choosing to do. We already made our choice to establish Māori wards in 2021, and the government is requiring us to take action which we wouldn't voluntarily have done, and which actually is forcing us to make decisions on the representation in our community without even being able to hold consultation because of the timelines involved. So the government's forcing us into a really untenable position here. So I think it's important that we say really clearly we support, we vote to retain the Māori wards, and our community understands that really clearly. I'm just going to say that Māori wards, I think, have been a really good thing for this council. I know when we voted to support them, the vote was unanimous, although I think some people on the day were not 100% behind it. We got that from the speeches that people made. But I think since we've had Māori wards on board, they've proved their value. The 3 Māori ward councillors sitting around this table, Tu O'Brien, Ngāpura Rangiaho, Tony Boynton, their contributions have been substantial and really valuable to this council. And I think anyone who's got any doubt about whether Māori wards are a good thing, those doubts must have been completely dealt with by the really valuable contribution of our Māori councillors. And I'm mihi to the three of you for coming up to speed really quickly with our council processes and inputting from the beginning and bringing your perspectives, which I think have really enhanced our discussions and our decision making. So I want to thank you for those. And the last thing I'll say is that I think this legislation isn't just taking us back to the status quo that existed before. It's actually forcing another level of requirement onto us, and I denounce it. So.
Thank you, councillor. Any other discussion before we put it to the vote? Councillor Rangiaho.
Okay. I'm here to kia tātou mai raro te tunu o tēnei whare. I probably just want to say me te tiro whakamuri kia ana whakamura. In essence, what that means is we look to our past to inform our present and our future. The current state of what's happening throughout nationwide, there's a storm brewing, and we're just in the calm, we're probably in the centre of that storm at the moment, but we know what's going to come before us. It's going to hit us as a nation. But what probably keeps me set in terms of this whakatauki or this proverbial saying is that I'm casting my eyes at 40, 50 year ahead. So we are in that, we're laying the foundation of change. And we must always be proud of where we come from to where we are now. And whatever gets thrown at iwi Māori or us as a nation, we still have to look ahead because that's where that future lies. And I believe, thank you to all the councillors for those hapau kōreros, honest conversations, but this is what we're going to do because of our next generation that's coming up before us. And I believe that we will form better, stronger relations, united in the direction for the well-being of all of us. So, tēnei te ia together.
Thank you, councillor. Well, if there's no further discussion, I'll put those 5 resolutions that David read out previously. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you, everybody. Councillor O'Brien, would you like to wrap it up?
Interesting conversations, and I do thank you, councillors, for your support of us as process. With that, we do all the stuff. Follow it to the power. Later on, the Rama Chika, and the Hoki Achukwe, one later, one tonu and tele Kakuni to follow. Whapau kore roe. Noa nei, la me hiri ki a koe. Mai, te ana koe, whatata ni iwi. Iwi, te rohe nei o whakata. Nā koe, te ramachi. Tika, kia inui tātou. Tā taunga mana ki tanga te maro, mea ngaro i runga i tēnā tēnā mato kia mahe ai te hua maki eke. Toi te kupu, toi te mana. Kaua toi ngā tika kupu, mea te whakairu, e whakawa te haumi e ui e.
Thanks, everybody.